Many people have commented how peaceful it is to come to Vermont to be here at Old Stonewall Farm. That can be deceiving because there is a lot of work to be done. For example, the wood shakes that I wanted so badly on this shed, even though I knew they weren't going to be sturdy, they're blowing off. And so I'm doing what my Swiss ancestors have done, put rocks on the roof to hold the shingles down. But there's even more chaos as the chickens got into the morning glories I wanted to plant around my trellis. And Fritz, being the good farm watchdog, chased them away. Yes, he tattled on the chickens. But as these days go by, I think more and more about what I want to do with my garden. And I came across a new way to garden, one that doesn't involve tilling the soil. It's called hugelkultur gardening, and it was done for many centuries in Germany and the surrounding countries. Basically, hugelkultur is about taking logs that have rotted and making a bed and interspersing them with dried leaves and grass clippings till eventually you have a mound of rich soil in which to plant in. I love the whole idea of a hugelkultur garden, not just because I have a lot of fallen trees on top of Sophie's Hill. It's been a bad winter with high winds. But I love the idea because it reminds me of an old Cherokee proverb that I came across, in which it says, "Walk softly on this earth." Well, welcome, my friends, to Old Stonewall Farm. I know it's been a while, but as I mentioned, it's going to be like this for a little bit longer until I get used to my new normal. I have now been working for the United Church of Christ as a communication specialist, and that has me traveling again. And so I am trying to find a rhythm in which to do all of the things that I am called to do and that I love to do. So thank you for your patience. I know that I missed you and you've been on my mind. As I mentioned, I have been traveling and I was flying back the other day, and at the airport at one of my connecting stops, I was in Philadelphia waiting to board a plane to go to Albany, New York. And as we were boarding, I saw this gentleman talking to another gentleman. And then he takes out his phone and he says, "Do you mind if I take a picture with you?" And so I was overhearing the conversation, and turns out the other gentleman was a YouTube sensation. He has 5 million followers, and this other gentleman recognized him. So I had to stop and just say to him, "Wow, that is great what you're doing." He asked me about what I was doing, and I told him about Old Stonewall Farm, and he could see from the passion in my voice that it was important to me. And he said to me, "Don't stop doing it. Just keep creating what you were passionate about." That was a God moment, because also in this time that I haven't been posting anything because of the traveling and getting used to my new work schedule, I've also been taking a step back and reevaluating this channel. It began 3 years ago as basically a substitution for my congregation, for a church. If you look back to older videos, they're longer and they're more churchy, as it has a call to worship, a prayer, and more the traditional hymns as the songs in the background. But now that the world has opened up again and people are returning to life, I was going to say life as it was, but we know that will never be. But people are returning to their churches. And these videos are now more about me sharing with you my passion for trying to have a life that is slower paced, that is filled with more God moments, and one that brings to you the history of Vermont, rural living, escapades, and 18th century tidbits on living skills. As I do make my own candles, I've made butter, I've made cheese, and my husband right now is working on the outdoor bake oven. But to meet this YouTuber with 5 million plus subscribers, and for him to give me those words of encouragement, again, that was a holy moment. That was my moment of, okay, just don't ever get down. That's one thing I wanted to share with you today. Don't ever get down if something isn't going the way that you had hoped it to go. Just have faith and redefine what is success. I'm redefining it. It's not to have millions of viewers, but to have precious viewers like each one of you, and to know that you are coming here to Vermont, to this 18th century house, and that you want to just sit back with me and take a deep breath and enjoy another way of living. And I hope walk away with something that inspires you. So thank you. Thank you, all of you. And I am in awe as to how God is working. So I was flying back, and when I landed in Albany Airport, it was around 11:30 at night, and I still had another hour and a half drive to get back to Vermont. So as I was driving, I thought I hit a patch of fog, but then the fog kept going on and on and on. I'm thinking, this is strange. And then I noticed my windshield, I couldn't really see too well, and I thought maybe it was pollen. So I put on the wipers, and there was this grit making the window worse than it was before. And I was thinking, there's something going on here. And that's when I rolled down my window and I smelled smoke. It was then I realized that it wasn't fog, but it was the smoke from the fires in Canada. All the way back home, it was smoky. There were some parts of the road where it was just, I couldn't see a thing. It was scary. There was one stretch on this rural road where there was this old white church with a steeple. And through the fog, the smoke, all you could see was the outline of the steeple. And at that moment, too, you could see the strawberry moon. I assume it was the strawberry moon. It was a bright pink, a deep kind of red. I wish that I stopped and filmed it for you all, because in that moment, I can't even describe to you what I felt. I can't say that I felt sad or scared or really just petrified what is going on in this world. But I did feel something heavy. And again, I still can't put words to what it was, that heaviness. But to see the outline of the church steeple in the smoke, and then to see that blood red moon and to smell the smoke, it was almost like end times. And I thought, what are we doing? I never thought in my life that I would ever experience these weather-related phenomena, these incidences, whatever you want to call them. I just seem to be at a loss of words lately. Walk softly. That was the Cherokee proverb that I came across when I was doing some research about gardening, and it really struck me profoundly. Walk softly. It had a way of living that took care of the land for future generations. A few weeks ago, I sat in on a gardening seminar, and the speaker said, don't rototill. If you have a rototiller and you want to create a new garden, unless you really, really have to, don't. Because the actual tilling will create more weeds. It's not healthy for the soil. And I never thought about that. I just assumed that if I want a garden, I would have to get the rototiller out or get my husband to do it, which he's not happy about. And we have done that. And then a few years ago, I decided not to ask my husband anymore to till a new patch. So I began to use raised beds. Also because the soil here in Vermont is a bit rocky, so the raised beds were a little bit easier to create a garden. But when I learned that the rototilling can create more weeds, I went back to that Cherokee proverb, walk softly, and thinking once again, we come in and we just destroy the everything that we are given. We just work it so hard, or we just rip it apart when there's another way. So when I came across what to do with all those rotten logs that are on top of Sophie's Hill, I was just in awe that once again, God provides for us. Once again, we have to see differently. What people might see as rotten logs on top of that hill that have no purpose can indeed be used to create a garden. Can we walk softly with how we treat the resources that we have? Now, I am not perfect when it comes to making sure to recycle and to really cut back on my carbon footprint. I fail miserably and I'm trying so hard, but what I realize is that it is almost impossible to try to not generate so much garbage if you really want to. It's almost impossible because everything is packaged in plastic. So when I found those rotten logs and I thought how great this is that I now can walk softly in this little patch of Vermont, I could create a hugelkultur garden. I was just so excited. I knew those logs had a purpose. The other day, amid some rain showers and sun constantly going in and out, I was on top of Sophie's Hill and I was trying to figure out how many I would need, and I would have to get my husband up there to cut them for me so I could bring them down because they were quite large. As I was looking at the logs and envisioning my hugelkultur garden, I kept thinking about walk softly. It just doesn't apply to how we take care of God's creation, how to walk softly on this earth, leaving behind still resources for the next generation. But I was thinking, walk softly applies to relationships. It applies to how we grow and nurture the bond between one another. We tend not to walk softly. We tend to be short with people. We tend to snip at others. More and more we put our own needs first. More and more we're being demanding, and more if we don't agree with one another, do we sit down and really talk it out? In the Bible, there's scripture in 2 Corinthians in which Paul, the apostle, writes to the church in Corinth that they were having a lot of problems. They were quarreling, and it's the very end of this letter, and he wants to sign off with just his last words of wisdom. And he begins with, brothers and sisters, seek restoration. And I think that's really interesting that in a church that is divided, in a family that is divided, in a community that is divided, heck, in a world that is just going at each one another's throats, seek restoration, not seek peace, seek to agree, but seek restoration, seek to restore what is broken. And that goes back to walking softly. If we walk softly, then we probably won't break anything. It's good to be back again. I'll get to a better schedule with Old Stonewall Farm. And if you really like this video, or you think somebody will be blessed by coming to 18th century home in Vermont and hearing and experiencing the crazy ideas that I have when it comes to 18th century living skills, or centuries old way of gardening, please share it with them and subscribe, like, comment. I want to hear your thoughts. So my friends, thank you. I want to hear from you, and I will see you shortly. God bless.